Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the PBSC podcast. Steve Moore and Mark Castleman here. We are here with episode 291 today. As you can see, it's a different style episode, and got a unique submission. Title of today's episode is Advice for Young Adults Struggling to Balance Mental Health Challenges, School Life, and Porn Addiction. This actually comes to us from a young adult. He's 18 and wrote us in. Is in school, juggling a lot of responsibilities, and we thought this would be a great one to tackle. This is what he says. Dear Mark and Steve, I hope this message finds you well. As an 18-year-old navigating my final year of school, I'm reaching out to seek advice for myself and other young adults struggling with porn addiction while managing demanding academic schedules and, in some cases, depression. I first encountered pornography at 14 after a serious discussion with my dad and twin brother about its risks and other aspects of growing up. Living with ADHD and being on the autism spectrum, my curiosity led me to experiment, which developed into an addiction I'm still working to overcome. I know many others my age face similar challenges, especially as we prepare to transition into adulthood after school. Your podcast has been a valuable resource, and I'm grateful for the guidance it offers, even if I don't listen as often as I'd like to. I recently came across it while searching for unrelated content on Spotify, which made me reflect on my choices and appreciate your work even more. While some episodes focus on married life, I believe the insights can benefit me and others in the future. Would you share some advice for young adults like me, particularly those balancing school, mental health challenges like depression, and the fight against porn addiction? Your perspectives would mean a lot to us as we step into that next phase of life. Thank you for creating such a helpful podcast. Wishing you both the best. First of all, that sounds like somebody who wrote that in their 30s.
I know. Isn't it not a guy finishing up high school?
Really applaud this guy's maturity and willingness to be so open about something like this. Gratefully, this topic of pornography, it seems to be, I mean, it's hard. We're obviously professionals looking from the outside in, but based on the clients that we work with and the circles that we run in, it does seem to be that this talk of issues surrounding pornography and addiction, especially in religious circles, does seem to be becoming more commonplace and not quite. We still have a ways to go, but not quite as taboo, not quite as, I mean, when Mark and I were growing up, at least in the culture we did, and we've heard the same from many across other cultures, it was just like the most taboo, don't talk about thing on the planet.
Yeah.
And it still is that way in many respects, but I just applaud this guy. It sounds like he has a really good self-awareness as well as a connection with the fact that, he's not the only one struggling with this. And is speaking from a place of, dealing with some mental health challenges. I do want to know before we jump into this that he says that, he's living with ADHD and being on the autism spectrum helped to lead to experiment with curiosity. I've not been diagnosed with either of those things, and I think the curiosity component, well, it can be exacerbated by other things like what he mentions. I think sex is something that young adults and teens are just inherently curious about.
Yeah.
Right. Between the crazy hormones and everything else, and so I honestly just think it's so great that an 18-year-old guy wrapping up high school wrote into us. So my friend, you are on a great track already out the gate, and literally dimensions further ahead than Mark or I was at your age.
Well, we talk about the words, accountable and responsible, account able, response able. I mean, we spent years learning what those those words even meant for us personally, individually. How do you take account for your own behaviors, your own decisions? How are you able to respond to whatever's happening in your life and your world. This kid at 18 is already knowing what it is to be accountable and responsible. And
Yeah.
just those aspects of where he's at, he's on a great path forward, because you've got to get to that place. Right. And we have a culture, not with just young adults, with people across the board, where we're getting away from being account able or accountable and response able, right? A lot of kind of excuse making, entitlement, victimhood. You just see it everywhere. And then this is kids coming from this place, owning his stuff, facing it straight up, looking for solutions, right? Open. It's really cool.
Well, and let's do, if Mark, if we can just indulge those definitions for just a second. He's pretty new to the podcast, as I know others who may listen to this episode would be as well. Because we talk about those two terms, account able and response able. We probably should define those really quick.
Yeah.
And I'll give my take, but Mark, you tell me. Mark probably has a better one than I do. But when I think of accountability, hyphenated, and response able, or being responsible, or responsibility, the accountability side is me being introspective and owning my stuff, right? Here's who I am, here's what I've done or not done, here's where I've been, here's been my level of involvement, or how I've played a role in this, or and not even that, but just how my role has played in with other roles, right? So it's kind of an understanding of that whole spectrum. Then the response able piece is, what can I actually do? Right? What is my sphere of influence? What can I actually influence or change here? Where can I take action? How will my actions or inactions impact this? And then making determinations about what I'm going to do in that regard. Would you agree with
I
that?
think you hit it right on. I mean, what I'm hearing in the way you're describing those is it's a very inward facing approach, as opposed to always looking outward, right?
Yes.
You're all to blame. It's all, you all got to do something about this, right? Instead of saying, what is my side of the street? What is my side of this? I can account for my part, and then I can decide how to respond to whatever is happening around me or inside of me. I'm account able and I'm response able, right? That's what that is. The other thing that hit me, Steve, is he wrote in, as we look at what's happening in our world today and the furious pace that it's all unfolding, we can only begin to imagine how challenging it would be to be a young adult today.
Yeah.
I mean, it just boggles the mind to think. I mean, can you remember me and you being 18 in this world?
Oh man,
Right? It's like crazy.
that was pretty wild.
So our hearts go out to, young people, teens, young adults in their 20s, even their 30s. This is a tough world. I think the first thing I wanted to, and again, to try to cover, this is like, okay, can you give me all the secrets of a successful life in 30-minute podcast?
Hmm.
So we're going to try our best to give some of the highlights of what we've experienced and what we've, helping others in the past 20 plus years. The first thing I thought of as I read his submission was way back to one of my very first mentors, who was a wonderful neuropsychologist, a great understanding of human behavior. And I remember him saying to me something, Mark, to your brain, meaning is everything, right? It's not just what's happening around you or inside of you. What does it mean? And based on that meaning, your brain will proceed forward. And attached to that concept, he said, if your why is clear and authentic and powerful, you will find you'll be able to deal with almost any how, right? The focus today is, how do I do this? How do I cope? Well, before the how, we've got to talk about your why. Now, I've got 5 sons who are all generally between the ages of 20 and 40. And I also work in my community here with a lot of young adults. And we've had some really deep conversations about what this current world means to these teens and young adults. And I'm hearing a lot of them come back to me and just say how hopeless it can feel at times and how pointless it all seems. And they'll often ask the question, why wouldn't I just indulge and escape and avoid? What future is there for me in this world? I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
this age group. And I thought it would be good for us to, address that and how, if we were back at that age, knowing what we know now, how would we approach this?
Mm.
Right? What steps would we take? Especially if we're talking first about this meaning and this why, right, behind it.
Yeah. Well, and I would agree with that. And I think that the vision piece is really critical here. You mentioned that in getting ready today, and we're pretty big on the vision component here. And perhaps there's no better time in life than at one's age at 18. I mean, again, really impressed with this guy and his openness to concepts like this. But this vision, we having a vision for oneself to me means many things. It's looking at my authentic self. It means who I want to become, right? Where am I going? But it also does mean asking some hard questions. We, in our Dare to Connect program for addict spouses and couples, we talk about a term. I use the term sometimes called playing the tape forward, which to me is just kind of that's probably a dated euphemism now that I think about it. When was the last time somebody used a tape with anything?
Play
Play the
the,
USB file forward
play the
or
digital file forward.
fast forward the digital file, I guess is what it is now. But back in the days when we had tapes, right? That would mean like looking down the line, right? So if I continue on whatever path I'm on right now, right, whether it's positive or negative, using that and examining that periodically is really important because I think that's what helps us to cultivate a sense of, we call it healthy selfishness, where we're not looking to take from others, but we are looking to say, where am I wanting to go and what am I going to need, right, to get there, whether it's in
Yeah, we've,
change or resources or whatever it might be.
and the other thing I notice about it, it's not just these, these young adults. It's I see so many of us today. If I were to kind of approach the average person on the street and just look at them, deep in the eyes and say, "Who are you? Who are you? Where does your sense of worth and value and purpose come from?" Right? What would the average person say? I think a lot of them would kind of look at you like you were weird, first of
Hmm.
all, but I don't know that they would have a really ready answer for that.
That's probably the case. And we addicts, and this is something that this guy seems to be in a pretty good place with all things considered, but many of us do struggle in addiction to one degree or another with kind of the survival mode we talk about on the podcast oftentimes, because there is so much going on and we are trying to, like you said, he's just trying to balance, right? He's trying to survive. Work, school, addiction, friends, big dreams. I mean, all of the things that, having fun, enjoying that time of life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot to juggle.
And mental health
Um,
challenges sprinkled on top of all of that you just said, right?
yeah. So there's a lot, right? And so, but as much as you can, tending to that and looking at that vision can be helpful for lots of reasons. But I think one of the biggest is it does help us to find and to reconnect with when needed the motivation for moving forward. Why am I doing these things?
I
What's
am
the what's
things.
the end from the beginning, right?
What matters to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
What
Absolutely.
what contributions and differences do I want to make in the world? What do I want to learn and grow into? What do I want to become? What am I becoming?
Yeah.
I would invite this guy and really even myself at an older age. Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 or 20 years? Right?
Yeah.
What is that vision? What is that why?
Well, and
So
I,
important to look at.
yeah, no, it is so important. Sorry to cut you off there. One thing that I love that you put in our notes today, Mark, and I think this is huge for anyone, but especially at this age, is the need to pause and celebrate when you make good steps or when you find little victories. Again, whether it's even in whether it's in any of these areas, but also definitely in this fight with pornography, right? Did you stretch out, your sobriety length by a day? Hell, maybe by a couple of hours, right?
Ah,
Between the one relapse versus the next. Did you go less into shame this time around? Did you bounce back quicker into wanting to try again, right? There's so many ways to gauge progress. We're kind of conditioned in our culture when you're talking about addiction to it kind of tends to revolve around, well, when's the last time you went to your addiction? And that's like the sole measuring stick through which many of us are kind of conditioned to see progress versus not. But just like going to the doctor, taking your temperature can be insightful, but it's by no means an overall indicator of health. There are lots of things that dictate that. That's kind of how a sobriety definition operates as well. And I like this idea of celebrating. I can't speak for everybody, but I've worked with a lot of youth. I know Mark has as well. I have some clients who are in college or high school age right now, and for me, middle school / junior high, depending on where you grew up, in the States, or high school. Unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of our peers in that age demographic, they're not very good at self-confidence or self-worth like most teenagers. They're also not very good at building themselves up. So oftentimes, in order to build oneself up or to get that perception, what do? We tear all the other people around us down so that we look taller. And
Yeah,
that's kind of a tragic reality, I think, of that demographic.
Or we engage in behaviors where we kind of give pieces of ourselves away, or don't act authentically or in harmony with our values because we want to be accepted and liked.
Yep, the pursuit for connection, the pursuit for popularity. I mean, those are all very tantalizing, and not even in many ways all bad. But the sooner you can be doing what Mark talked about here again in our preparation for today, in terms of learning how to celebrate your own victories, especially around something like this that is so personal. Most of us struggle with that because we struggle with self-worth and self-esteem issues. I think it's important, especially for a guy who's just getting into this at 18. You are in competition with one person, and that is the guy in the mirror.
Yeah, just you.
When it comes to this, that's it.
And if you're going to be able to be conscious enough to notice when you've made little incremental, positive steps and celebrate that, you really have to develop a daily routine, right? Like a daily routine of taking some quiet, meditative time to focus on your vision and your why, right? Yeah. See it, see yourself. I like to kind of call it you're going through a dress rehearsal for your day. And you're visualizing, right? Steve, you and I have talked about how pornography and sex addicts are amazing visualizers.
Yes.
So we already know how to do it. We know how to see things clearly in our minds. We take that ability and we use it to see our day ahead, to visualize me pursuing my vision, me pursuing my best self, to feel what that feels like in advance. And if you want to get really, really into the more advanced stages of this, as you're feeling what that feels like to be engaging in those things as you visualize it, you actually feel grateful that you've been able to do it before you've done it, right? Having that routine where you go through what I'm describing. Then during the day, when you actually notice that you're doing some of those things, even small, you stop and you celebrate and you feel grateful. This is actually come into being. Wow, I saw this morning when I was in my routine. Hey, everybody, PBSE podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries, and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Ah, love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today. Well, and where does this fall into place when it comes to the timepiece? Because I know it's one of the questions that he posed, right? I'm busy. I've got all these things going on. We definitely hear you there. And I work with a couple of guys in college right now, and so I can definitely speak to this. One of, I think, the most critical things that I've seen to be successful for guys in your age demographic, across the board, to be fair, but especially in your age demographic, is that whatever self-care routine that Mark is talking about that you come up with, whether it involves journaling or meditation, getting out and exercising, pursuing passions, getting outside of yourself through service or something like that, you do need to make sure that what you set up is consistent. And in order for that to happen, it has to be sustainable.
Yes, yes.
Neurobiological change in the brain, there's been lots of research about this, happens better and more efficiently with little efforts over a sustained period than it does with big spurts of like huge attempts to change, followed by being overwhelmed, stepping back from whatever it was out of exhaustion, and then trying to recommit.
Yeah.
If you've
Yeah.
got realistically, I'm thinking of one guy that I work with right now where realistically he was taking like 22 credits or something like that in college, which is a lot,
It's a
plus
lot.
working a little bit. We sat down, we had an honest conversation, and he said, "Honest Abe, Steve, I've got, what did he tell me? I have about 20 minutes between like my lunch break and on my way home on the bus, where I would consistently, I have sometimes a little bit more energy, but I have that." And so we talked about a routine where he made a list of some of the things that we just talked about and others. And he would pull out his list on the bus on the way in the bus on the way home, obviously not the exercise one, but all the others, and he would pick one. This is what I'm doing today. I'm tuning everything else out. I'm turning off my phone. And he would just focus on that one thing, doing the journaling, right? Finding a way to, pursue a passion of his. There were multiple things that he was interested in at the time. Getting into something that took him outside of himself, planning something down the road, right? I mean, whatever it is, make it sustainable. And I would say start there. You will be so much better served. I can't tell you how much, and I'm sure Mark did too. So much stopping and starting, making these big grandiose plans, and then it fails. And then you get that sense of failure, because I think there's two important sides to self-care, right? There's the self-care that you're actually doing, which benefits you, right? Psychologically or physically or emotionally or whatever. But then there's a benefit to it. Every time you complete it, what do you experience? You experience a sense of completion and a sense of resolution and a sense of accomplishment. And one thing that shame-based addicts tend to struggle with having in short supply is feeling good about themselves, right?
Well, and
Or
I
having a
love you.
sense of
If
accomplishment.
you were to ask me, so what if you, Mark, if you could only choose one aspect of change, just one, you had to pick the one, you said it, it's consistency. And like you said, the neuroscience, the brain science over a long time shows if you want to have long-term positive change, you just be consistent, right? One of my mentors said it this way. He said, Mark, the more you do something, even teeny tiny small something, the more you can do it, right? That's how the brain works. So that consistency and that daily self-care routine, that's got to be the top priority. Like you said, even if it's 20 minutes on the bus, the point is you did it each day for 20 minutes. It wasn't there a big military guy who was super successful that called it making your bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just make your bed every morning, every morning.
I can't remember the name of him, guys, but there was a 4-star general who gave a talk at a commencement address at a prominent college who that was the title of his address was making your bed.
Your bed.
It's really good. That's what Mark's referencing. We can't remember his name, but if you Google it, you'll find it pretty easy.
The other part of this, he mentions mental health challenges like ADHD, depression. He mentions being on the autism spectrum. And, Steve, you and I have both suffered with mental health issues our whole lives. And we've worked for, decades with those who have the same challenges. One of the things that we've discovered through our own personal work and working with others, we call it meeting yourself where you are with regard to your capacities. Right? We could beat ourselves up all day long about what we can't do because I'm ADHD, or what I can't do because I'm depressed, or I'm on the autism spectrum, therefore these are the things I'll never be able to, right? Fill in the blank.
Mm.
Being okay with yourself. I'm okay just like I am. Doesn't mean I don't want to improve and continue to try, but I'm okay. And I will operate within my capacities. So I'll give you an example. I've had attention deficit issues my whole life. I've worked with a lot of guys who have the same thing. One of the ways to work within your capacities is, for example, you say, hey, one of the things that I'm not great at is just remembering things in my own head. So what I know that I need to do is to start my day out with a master list. All the things that when I'm quiet and I'm meditative that I might possibly need to do, I write them down on my master list. Now, why is that important to have everything written down on a master list? So that when your ADHD brain comes and says, oh my gosh, what did I forget? What was that thing? Oh no, was it this? Was it that? Right? Look at the distraction. Say, hey, I have my master list. Oh, that's right. It's all there. I go look at my master list and then I run down my master list and say, okay, what are the 3 things off this master list that I will do today? No matter what happens today, those 3 things will be done. I just choose it off my master list and then turn it into my daily list. That way, so you see the tool you're using whenever the busy brain decides to get distracted, you just call it back to your lists. That's just one example of a tool of operating within your capacities that I've seen be very effective.
I think it's super helpful. There is, all of this, the self-care, the self-regulation it hails to many things, but it does emphasize an important element. Again, whether you struggle with mental health conditions or not, being in those young years, it's a hard time. It really is.
Right.
There's lots of growth, there's lots of development, life changes occurring, a lot you're changing major life stages. It's very easy to become discouraged or to not take care of yourself, especially in this crazy busy world. Making small amounts of time in the ways that Mark described, is huge. And so we would definitely encourage that wherever we can, because it is important to be practicing and recognizing that even though I might have things to change, and no, this is not something that you'll just read on a pillow somewhere. This is something that we really do mean. You're okay as you, right? The guy who has things that he's struggling with that he's wanting to change. Being able to practice self-acceptance is huge. I think for anyone struggling with addiction or other issues, but especially in those formative years when you're 18, 20, figuring out where you're going to go, be gentle with yourself, man.
Yeah.
Like you got your whole life ahead of you to decide and make big decisions. Being the very best you and practicing, when you are hearing all these crazy voices about who you ought to be and who you are, try to quiet those as much as you can and be asking yourself, focusing on, I'm okay as I am, and what do I want? Where do I want to go? Where do I want to end up? You know?
Yeah. And then did I make even the tiniest steps towards that in some way today? And can I
Yeah.
celebrate and feel good about that?
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
he mentioned addiction, and it's of course that's what we do a lot of. It's a huge topic,
Absolutely.
but I thought of a couple of really simple things that if I was a young adult, what would be helpful to me? A couple things came to my mind. First of all, these sexual urges, they're not evil, they're not bad. In fact, they're just the opposite. I call them creative energy looking for a way to be channeled and expressed. right? How often do we think of sexual urges as a creative energy within me that's looking for a way to be expressed, to be used? And I would invite, any young adults or anybody listening who struggles with these sexual urges to realize what they are, right? Yeah, they're brought on by testosterone surges, they're brought on by all sorts of natural processes within me, but it's just energy looking for a way to come out. Now, if we don't have a mind to taking care of ourselves, then when that energy does hit us, our survival, panicking, anxious, worried, fearful brains will take that energy and try to use it in the quickest way to escape possible. But if we can start to become more aware, Steve, you and I have an acronym called BLASTED, BLHAST. I get blasted, right? Bored or burned out, lonely, hungry, anxious, angry, anxious or afraid, stressed or tired. How many of those listening have felt any of those? You'd say all of them today. But when you notice that you're feeling blasted, when you notice that some of these feelings are coming on, you notice them as early as possible, and then you look to engage in healthy outlets to address them early, so that energy, that sexual energy, doesn't build and build and build, and you've neglected yourself in all those blasted ways. And by the time you notice, that energy's already taken over, and you're seeking your escape outlets. So noticing early, taking care of yourself early. Oh, I know what that little feeling of depression is right there. Okay, I'm going to go do this right now. Or, oh boy, I'm starting to feel a little bored. I know where that's going to take me. Let me address that right now. Right? This practice of intervening for yourself early in all of those different blasted emotions. So that was one thing that really came to me.
For sure. Well, and as you hear us talk about on the podcast, oftentimes and in our D2C program, this sexual addiction has very little to do with sex, and it has much more to do with connection.
That's right.
Connection with self, connection with a higher power, connection with other people, in that order. And there are lots of things that are constantly beckoning for attention. And so as we get close to wrapping up here, a couple of things. It is important for anyone struggling with addiction, including you guys at a younger age and girls, because we know this is becoming, we should have acknowledged at the beginning, this is becoming a very common issue for young women as well. That making sure that you're establishing and cultivating where you can a healthy connection with family and friends who are like-minded, who get it, share your general values and vision. Oftentimes in our DSC program, I use the term stick with the winners,
Yeah.
right? That's an important piece. Gravitate to those whose attributes and qualities you're trying to model. Getting into some sort of a 12-step support group helps to dial in on this process really well. Sexaholics Anonymous, which you can find more information about at sa.com, is a good resource for those struggling with sexual addiction. Fellowship that I ascribe to and have for a decade and a half, have found a lot of help there. Highly recommend something like that. Our program, like Dare to Connect, it's this is going to sound like some sort of sales pitch, but it's not just for couples.
Oh.
It really truly is for anybody who's struggling. We have individuals who are in the program in addition to couples. A lot of the content, like on the podcast, well, a lot of it is geared towards coupleships for those who are looking to become attached and committed relationships down the road and find themselves single now. Good grief. I wish I'd had a D2C program.
And if we had all the background of D2C before we got married.
Oh my gosh. And learning what attachment's supposed to look like in a relationship, how it pertains to addiction, what it looks like in the context of addiction. This is not just for married people. So we hope that you'll look that up, and we will hook you guys up with any of you that do come over to daretoconnectnow.com with a 2-week free trial. You can click on that when you come over and visit. But in addition to that, if you need individual one-on-one help with a professional like Mark or myself, there are lots of qualified professionals out there. You'll want to look with somebody who is a CSAT, certified sex addiction therapist, or has some sort of similar training. That's probably a good starting point. But that's a great place to begin. And the last thing that I had to share, my last thoughts on this are, just to give each of you an exercise, because I really like where this guy started at the beginning. All of us in this crazy, noisy, busy world we live in, and you young people are just coming into it. We live in a world where there are 1,000 voices beckoning for your attention all the time, like
all the time.
constantly.
Mhm.
And there is not enough time in the day to support all of them, nor should we. And it's really important that when we are looking at, and when you're at a critical stage like you guys are in terms of balancing life priorities, figuring out where you want to spend your time, make sure that your priorities and what you're putting your time, your valuable time and energy into, are in alignment with what your true goals and values are. Um, there are two concepts that I'll just mention quickly. You've heard us talk about on the podcast before: cognitive dissonance and cognitive resonance. Cognitive dissonance refers to this idea of how much are my actions out of alignment with my authentic self and who I'm trying to be. Cognitive resonance stands for the opposite. How much are they in alignment with one another?
Yeah.
And you want to bring that resonance or that dissonance down as much as you can and that resonance up as much as you can. There's an exercise that I give all my clients at some point in time when they first come to my office, and it's a good one for all of you to try if you're listening to this podcast. Make yourself a list. First of all, of the top 5 things that in a perfect world, like out of everything, God, church, family, school, job, money, fun, Nintendo, Xbox, whatever. Like whatever, what are your top 5 priorities in your life if you were to look at your authentic self and list them in order, 1 through 5? Then, if like in a perfect world, if you could devote all your time and energy to these things in order, what would they be? Make yourself a second list of 5 things. But the second list is you giving an honest assessment in order of does your emotional, physical, time, and other types of resources, where do they go to in terms of order, in terms of from most to least? And then
Yeah.
compare the two lists and see how they
Yep.
line up.
Yep. One list is if I was to be pursuing what truly matters most to me, truly becoming my ultimate awesome self, what are the top 5 things that would get my time and attention? And then the other list is how am I actually spending my time and my attention on a daily basis?
Will give you an excellent insight into how cognitively dissonant or resonant you are living. It's an important skill set for anyone to grab. I'd give all the tea in China if I could go back in time and have someone tell me that at 18 and me listen to it.
And starting and finishing your day by looking at those 2 lists and making adjustments.
Oh, yeah.
Huge.
It's hard to quantify the shift that will make in your life.
Yeah.
We really appreciate, again, this guy reaching out, and we honor all you guys, young and old, as well as gals, again, young and old as well, who are finding yourself facing such a difficult challenge. This truly, in many ways, is the plague or scourge or whatever you want to call it of our time. There are good resources out there available, and we're glad that you're finding help, hope, and healing here at the podcast. As always, if you like what you hear on the podcast, you will love Dare to Connect, as well as the consistent. If you like tuning in for half an hour a week, picture getting the same content, but getting it interactively where you can ask questions from us and from other people in the community, collaborate, find connection, and to do that 4 different times a week for over 4 hours, nearly 6 hours. And in tandem with that, be able to get all of the other content that we provide with our D2C Academy advanced courses and other sources for hope and healing. We hope that you'll check that out at daretoconnectnow.com. We'd love to have you come check that out with a 2-week free trial.
Yeah, sounds good. Hey, thanks for being with us here as always. I love and appreciate all of you and all the efforts you're making in your lives and relationships. And we'll catch you next time on PBSE.
Be safe, guys.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.